that in the first 5 minutes, when you get into your office, you set a tone for the entire day. It's the old adage, nobody gets a second chance at a first impression. Now, I don't know if you remember this, Bob, or Bill and Bob. I know you probably do, but in the class I did for you last spring, I talked about the things that we have control over. Remember that control model? Over here it's no control, and over here it's total control. Things over here that we don't control are things like the weather and death, whether we're going to die or not. We're all going to die. In taxes, you have no control on whether you're taxed or not. Now, you control whether you're going to pay them or not, and the government has some interesting incentives attached to encourage you to do that, but you don't control whether you're taxed or not. Weather is another no control. Time, the passage of time. And traffic, rush hour traffic. Did you know that most people walk this planet, spend a majority of their life stressed out over all the things they have no control over? And this is where they put their body. No control type of things. As a result, they're stressed out, they're angry, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're fearful. Well, this side of the stage, if that side's no control, this side's total control. What are the events in our life we have total control over? Total control. Yeah, but I wish you could see the look on some of your faces. I said, what are the events we have total control over? Some of you went, you know, I really don't know of any. I thought I had one yesterday. I was told I was wrong. Somebody said attitude. I'm going to recommend it's your behavior. Your behavior. What you eat, when you eat, how you eat, what you wear, when you get up. Now, when I first moved to Houston, Texas, almost 13 years ago, I was scheduled to go out to Odessa, Texas. Do any of you know where Odessa, Texas is? Kurt, I had no idea where it was. When I first got the assignment, I thought I was going to Russia. There's an Odessa, Russia. And I went into my wife, honey, I'm going to Russia. She said, I think that's Texas. I said, Odessa, Texas, where's that? She said, I don't know, go ask Glenn. So I go next door and I said, Glenn, is there an Odessa, Texas? He said, oh yeah. I said, where is it? He said, well, it's not hell, but you can see hell from there. Very dry, very, very desolate. And I'm doing this class, and I said, you totally control what you eat, when you eat, how you eat. And a guy in the class raised his hand, and he said, no, ye don't, partner. They say partner a lot out there. I said, what do you mean? He said, you don't totally control what you eat or when you eat. And I said, well, sure you do. And he said, no, you really don't. And I said, well, explain that to me. He said to me, you need to meet my wife. And I said, what does that mean? He said, half the time I don't even know what it is she fixes, but he said, always eat it. And I said to him, you don't have to. He turned to the guy sitting next to him and he said, he needs to meet my wife. What he was saying is he couldn't control the way that she reacted or she responded to his not eating her food, but he had control over whether he did or not. You agree with that? The only events you have control over is your own behavior. Now let me tell you why I'm bringing this up in a speech entitled Connections Make the Difference. You are the only one that is imbued with power to make the connection. If you're waiting for somebody else to make that connection, what if they don't show up? And folks, you don't control other people's behavior. You have to give them a reason to want to make that connection. I'm telling you, it's in those three components of heart, mind, and body. And do you all agree with that? We don't control others? I mean, I learned this 29 years ago when my oldest daughter was 8 months old. On one occasion, I came home from work, walked into the kitchen, found my wife and my daughter Natalie sitting in a high chair, and the two of them were glaring at each other. And you could feel the tension as you walked into the room. So I said to my little bride, honey, what's the matter? She didn't even look up. She said, Natalie won't eat her strained spinach. And you should have seen the look on Natalie's face. She's firm in her resolve. She's looking up at her mother as though she has lockjaw. Now, my feeling is when they're that young, you can control their behavior. So I said to my wife, honey, I'll bet I could get her to eat her strained spinach. Well, that was a bad move on my part. Because she said, fine, you do it, and started to walk out of the kitchen. And then it made matters worse by saying, no, no, sweetheart, stick around. I'd like you to see how to do this. Guys, how many of you in this room are married? Don't ever do that. And ladies, I found out why I did it. I found out. I'm from Mars and she's from Venus. Well, as soon as my daughter sees that I've entered the kitchen, she can't talk, but I know what she's thinking is, as soon as she sees me, this look of love comes over her face, and this look says to me, "Oh, Daddy, you're here to rescue me. Mom wants me to eat this yucky stuff. I've never seen her eat it. I've never seen you eat it. I'm not going to eat it." That's what the look said. Well, this is where my feeling of control comes from. I've noticed with a small child, or even with a grown-up for that matter, you can squeeze their little cheeks right here and get an opening big enough for a baby spoon. So I walked over to Natalie and very lovingly and very gently, I squeezed both of her little cheeks together. And sure enough, the opening appears. But the look of love leaves. Now the look that's on her face says to me, "You're in cahoots with Mom, aren't you?" I look over at my wife, making sure she's watching this. I get the strained spinach onto the little baby spoon. I slide the spoon into the opening I have created, scoot the spoon up next to her gums, withdraw the spoon, and then I've noticed you can seal their little lips with those three. She's got to swallow it. Right? That's what I learned. 3 seconds later, I found out what jet propulsion is all about. She exploded all over the front of me. My wife is now on the floor in hysterics, saying, "Show me that again." I said, "Honey, Natalie doesn't like strained spinach. Don't make a big deal about it." And I walked out of the kitchen. So, are we in agreement that if the connections are going to be made, you got to take the initiative? That means you got to call each other, whether it's a safety issue, just to make this organization powerful. I liked what Amy said today about great places to work. You know what it healed, or what it all was about? You know what the notes I took? Listen to this, folks. You want to hear an industrial strength aha. She said, in order for you to be a great company, there has to be a genuine belief in people, in each other, that it's set up on the screen, indispensable. Well, now, that's got to start up here, doesn't it? Isn't that a mind issue? And then the second thing she said, that there had to be active communication. What is that? Heart, mind, or body? You've got to communicate. Isn't that body? And the third thing she said was, there has to be distinctive policies and practices. And then in the description she had, that create special relationships. That's heart. See, it isn't just the emotions that create. It's when we bring our heart into it, and there's a passion in what we do. I'm very happy to be here today. As Bob mentioned, my name is Rory Aplanalp, and I don't expect you to be able to say Aplanalp. I was in the 3rd grade before I learned how to do it. Originally, I'm from Salt Lake City. I moved to Houston in July of 1990, and being from Salt Lake, I probably should mention I have 8 children, but I only have 1 wife. That's kind of a geographical joke, and you really had to be there. You know more about me now than I know about you, so I have a little icebreaker I like to use. And I warned these people about this. I only call on people on the back table. So, Dane, I'd like to start with you. I'd like the 4 or 5 of you at the back table to tell me 3 things. It's a way for me to kind of get to know you a little better. Number 1 is your name. Number 2 is how old you are. Number 3 is how much money you made last year. Don't you like the idea? Kurt's saying, "Can you ask that?" Okay, you don't have to tell me how old you are. Or how much money you made last year, and I'll repeat it so the rest of the group can hear. But there are 2 things I'd like all of you to tell me on the back row. There's a reason why I'm having you do this. I'd like the rest of you to think about this. Number 1 is your name. Number 2 is what food would you eat if you knew it was going to be your very last meal. Everybody got that? Your name and what food you would eat if you knew it was going to be your last meal. Dane? Nice steak. Welcome, Dane. Glad you're here. Earl?